Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Adoptions from the Heart TV. I'm your host, Amanda Aliberti. Today, we are joined by Valerie Trumbower. She is a postpartum doula, a lactation counselor, and she is founder of New Parents Academy. Let's welcome Valerie.
Thanks for having me, Amanda. It's nice to meet you.
So, Valerie, can you first share with our audience a little bit of your background of kind of what prompted you to get into this field, a little bit about who you are, what your goal is with New Parents Academy?
Sure. So I am a postpartum doula and a lactation counselor. So what this means, and that alone, very often people are like, what is that? And then when I start to explain it, people are like, that's a thing. So as a postpartum doula, I go into people's homes, usually the first or second night after they bring their baby home, and really help with that transition of everybody getting comfortable. You as a new parent are in a new role. Your baby is learning to live outside the belly for the very first time. And no matter if you carry that baby in your body or not, there is a transition that's happening for everyone. And since I've been doing this for years and years, there's just a shortcut. And so there doesn't have to be that learning curve. And so that's what I do with the families who I work in person with. And then it was, I was probably 5 years into being a doula at the time that I worked with my first adopting family. That was an Adoptions from the Heart family, and they were matched with twin boys. They were 2 weeks out from the baby's due date, and I have twin boys. It was my first adopting family. There were a lot of things that were really special about that experience. Those babies came a little bit early, and so I kind of jumped in earlier than we imagined, but it was really pivotal because there are some things that it doesn't matter how this baby came to be in your life. The way I would say, like, here's the 3 ways to burp a baby. Don't forget this when you're bathing a baby. There's things that it doesn't matter. And then there's some things where how you're bonding with the baby or different feeding choices that you're making that are different if you've adopted the baby. So that's kind of the education that I work to put out into the world, the adoption specific education to speak directly to hopeful adoptive parents.
Yeah, there is still like this misconception that when people hear the word doula, they don't necessarily associate that with somebody that could help a prospective adoptive family or an adoptive family that was just placed. Talk to us a little bit about like ways you assist adopting families who are in the process, maybe not quite yet placed with a child, but some of the supportive resources you help with.
Sure. Yeah. So that's a place where it is going to look different. If you're a family who is preparing to adopt and you're like, okay, I know that when I bring the baby home, I want to have a postpartum doula come. Let's assume you're not matched at this point. Okay. So you're not like, here's my due date. I'm delivering here. I'll probably be in the hospital this many days. You don't know where you'll be traveling to. You would reach out, you would find a doula, and then have that understanding. I will let you know as soon as we're matched. I will let you know as soon as the expectant mother is in labor. I'll keep you informed. And then what that person can also do in preparation to help you is and these are things that I talk to people about all the time, is what do you need to have with you when you go to meet the baby? There is a lot you don't need to have, and there's some things that are going to make things a lot easier. Your postpartum doula would be able to help you in that preparation. And then what do you need to have when you come home, when you bring the baby home? It's not everything on the Target baby registry. You don't need to put out these costs at this point, but there are basics that you want to have. So I think from the preparation standpoint and then the education standpoint, if you're lucky enough to go to the hospital and you're sitting there and they're talking to you about discharging the baby, when the nurse is talking to you, if there's things that you already know, these aren't things that you're hearing for the first time, you're going to feel prepared. It's easy to take this downward spiral. If she's talking about an umbilical stump and the baby lost weight and all of these things where you're like, what's that? What is that? You're going to feel like you're going to start to question it. Like, am I ready? Am I ready to bring this baby home? You are. But I think that it helps to have education ahead of time that can help you to feel prepared in that moment. And so that's what I do. And that's what I think that a postpartum doula would be able to do for you.
I do want to make mention that our agency does require our prospective adoptive parents to take some sort of like newborn care class, something basic, just generally going over newborn care. Is that something that you do offer?
Yeah, I have a free workshop. I walk through 7 things adoptive parents learn the first week home with a newborn. And that's prepping you for that first week post-placement. It doesn't matter. You don't know where that's going to be. You might be in a hotel. You might be in an Airbnb. You might be at home. But there's things that if you know ahead of time, it's going to make that time go more smoothly. And it's going to mean when it's happening, like one thing that I talk about in there right off the bat, it's probably, I think it's number one, is understanding the baby's cry and understanding this is the only way the baby can communicate. And so that flips a switch for you, because if you bring home this baby and the only thing he's doing is crying, there's things that go through your mind where you're like, would he be crying if I was his birth mother? Is he crying because he doesn't feel safe or he doesn't love us? Nope, that's not it at all. He's crying because that is the only way he can get any message across. And so when you can understand things like that, it can be helpful. So those are the kind of things that I talk through in that free workshop.
Once a family is placed with a child and they bring child home, I know sometimes it can be hard, specifically for adoptive families, because there's this like fear. If I tell somebody that something's wrong, or I'm questioning, say, the bonding between myself and my baby, are they going to take the baby back, right? Am I not as good enough as a parent? That sort of thing. Is that something that you work through with clients about, and just kind of being there to support them if they do have questions and maybe are fearful to talk about things with their social worker at the adoption agency, or their medical professional, things like that?
For sure. Yeah. And I talk a lot to adopting parents about giving yourself permission to feel all of these feelings, because this has been a long time coming, and there's been a lot of prayers and a lot of fundraising and all of these things, to the point that you're like, okay, I don't feel like I'm even allowed. You might have slept last night for a total of an hour and 20 minutes, and it was in 15-minute increments. But you can't tell your friend this stinks and you're exhausted because they contributed to your fundraiser. And it's like, no, you're allowed to like love this time and be thankful for this time, and also be like, but this also stinks. Like the way I feel right now stinks. And you don't have to love every moment. So I talk to people a lot about being okay with the way that you're feeling. No new parents are loving every moment. People are always like, I'm not loving this. It's like, no one's loving this. Don't feel bad. Say it. These are the kind of things. I only work overnights as a doula when I work in people's homes. So very often people are saying things to me at like 2 a.m. and they think it's like the biggest secret. I'm like, everyone says this. Nobody loves this part. But it's important that you have someone where you can just speak openly and feel like the feelings that you have are valid, and understand things like we were talking about with understanding the baby's cry, and understanding that this is a very short window, right? So this is a newborn who, he's not smiling, he's not cooing. It's like, I thought this was going to be great. I was picturing, this one thing, and now okay, but this is such a short window. And just having that person who's being really open with you about that and letting you feel all the feelings.
Absolutely. Now, what are ways that folks can connect with you? Like, what are the options in terms of your services? Or is this something that's done like over phone, text, email, in person? Like, what are the options that families may have if they elect to work with you?
At this point, the majority of families, it's online. I live outside of Philadelphia. I do work in people's homes, but it's really limited. So the majority of families that I'm working with and supporting, it's happening online. All the members of my online course also have a week of one-on-one support. So we're texting and doing audio messages, so that as you're navigating this time, and it's something simple like, we gave him a bath last night and he screamed the entire time. Okay, well then I can share like, okay, when you do it tonight, make the water this temperature, dim the lights, use a sound machine, and try this, this, and this. And then you can come back and be like, okay, we did that and it was great until this happened, and now we're trying to figure out this. And then it's like, okay. And so it gives us the opportunity to talk through things.
I mean, that sounds amazing. It almost seems like you're an extra cushion, just another supportive resources as a first-time parent, or even a second-time parent who maybe just needs pressure to have somebody else in their corner. Now, What are the ways that people can get in touch with you to learn more about your organization?
So I'm always on Instagram at New Parents Academy. And then my website as well, newparentsacademy.com. And when you go on there, you'll see, it'll say I'm pregnant or I'm adopting. Once you click I'm adopting, it takes you into your own world with all the adoption resources.
Wonderful. And I did have a chance to look at your website, and it's very friendly. It's very easy to kind of navigate and just learn more about the services that you offer. Any other final words, Valerie, that you would like to share with our audience, just as you are an important person in our bigger picture of people growing their families?
I think that one thing that I've learned through the years is that there is hopeful adoptive parents who have not yet been matched often feel they aren't qualified to be, watching a baby. I know you guys require some courses, and I think that's awesome. But also take in as much information as you can during this time, because it's preparing you. And so using that time that you're waiting to understand life with a newborn, to kind of just educate yourself on this. If you're adopting with a partner, for your partner to also understand what this time is going to look like, because then it frees you up mentally. It frees up your time after the baby's here. You're not Googling at 3 a.m. You're not worried about something that you're like, oh, actually, that's totally fine. It's like something as simple as, a lot of times babies sound like they're congested. If you could either be sitting there cuddling, doing skin to skin with your new baby, or you're like, is he breathing? Like, those are two very different feelings. And so when you've learned about this ahead of time, you're like, okay, this is the congestion they were talking about. Now I know, and I'm gonna, sit here and do my skin to skin. So that education during that waiting time, it really can transform what that post-placement time looks like.
Well, and that's really helpful, because I know, as you probably can imagine, the waiting time is one of the most challenging times for families in the adoption process. And maybe taking a course like yours, or connecting with you, or just getting more education to prepare them is something they can do to also keep busy, to allow themselves to feel like they're being proactive in their journey towards becoming parents, because it is hard. The adoption process, there's a lot that goes into it, a lot of paperwork, a lot of procedural things. And sometimes I think folks may lose sight of the bigger picture, and it's funny to say, but it's like, at the end of the rainbow, you're actually going to be placed with a baby. What is this going to feel like?
Right.
Be prepared for the ins and outs and the reality of being a parent. So I like that you touch on some of these really important topics, because they are important. We want to make sure that families are as prepared as possible.
Yeah, and that's what I always say. I get to skip to the good part. At the end of all this, you have a baby. And that's also why, for my online course, people have access until the baby arrives. Like, I think it's set up as like 2 years, but it's like, okay, if that process takes longer than 2 years, email us and let us know when you've been matched, because I want you to take in this information, like we just talked about, when you're in that waiting period. But then when the baby's here and you're like, wait, what was I supposed to do? How am I giving the baby a bath? What were the 3 ways to burp a baby? You want to be able to go back and like watch it again, because you're not expected to remember all of this, but learning it ahead of time, and then knowing like, okay, I have access to, or I know that I want to remember that this is here, or something like that. So prepare ahead of time, and then have resources that you can like dive back into to really in the moment. Because again, it takes away the worry, it takes away the fear. Newborns, for something that weighs 6.5 pounds, they're intimidating and it's scary. And you're like, gosh, I feel like I should know what I'm doing. Everyone thinks that they were supposed to be born instinctively knowing how to care for a newborn, which it's like my mission in life, that I'm like, why does everyone think they can just like do this job right out of the gate? There's no other job we think we can do out of the gate. So show yourself grace, prepare, and then have those resources right there.
I love it. I love it, Valerie. Well, thank you so much for sharing. If our audience members do want to check you out, please feel free to go see your organization, New Parents Academy. Check you out on Instagram. I'm sure we'll put all your info underneath after we share this video. So thank you again for your time. And we're just grateful to have people like you in the corner of our family. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Please feel free to check out our YouTube channel to subscribe to learn more about our agency and find wonderful people like Valerie Trumbower.